establish communications.
This week on Aussie JetSetter, we're attempting to fly on Virgin Australia's little-known seasonal direct summertime service between Perth and Launceston, Tasmania, for the second time in just one day. After our original flight to Tasmania abruptly had to return to Perth after encountering radio control issues. Which was quite a shame because I was having a great flight, and even better, I was flying up the pointy end in business class. Nonetheless, we returned to Perth in an orderly fashion and the airline were quick to enact a plan B. So without further ado, come join me as we get to experience how Virgin Australia handled one of the most unlikeliest of contingencies and what it was like to fly on a last minute rescue replacement aircraft, and ultimately whether that had any detrimental impact on my overall business class experience. Good afternoon and welcome to Not Quite Perth Airport. Well, not quite yet. We're actually here, believe it or not, in my own backyard here in beautiful, warm, sunny Perth. If you're wondering why the hell I'm here in my backyard, well, don't worry, we'll be heading to airport shortly. So today's video isn't actually where my Perth to Launceston business class adventure actually began. Long story short, it's actually an unexpected continuation of what turned out to be a very long travel day heading over to beautiful Launceston. Basically, long story short, it's actually a part B of the whole flight. If you saw my part A, aka the business class flight to nowhere, you would have saw that the flight to Launceston unfortunately had to return to Perth. Nothing too dramatic happened as like a mechanical failure or anything like that, but what basically happened was, as we were leaving the coastline of West Australia behind, just past Hopetown, what basically happened was the pilot was unable to establish all the necessary communications required to head so far off the coast down towards Tasmania. It wasn't a fact that we were out of all communications, just was a fact we couldn't establish all the right protocols necessary. I think it was something to do with HF frequency or something like that. That was the problem. So yeah, that meant we had no choice but to return to Perth. We even had to drop the landing gear, do some loops around the wheat belt region of WA as well, burn off some fuel so we come in underweight. Very pleasantly, when we arrived back at the gate, they announced that they were able to successfully acquire a replacement aircraft to take us to Launceston that night, and they also were able to find a replacement crew, which to my great thanks very kindly decided to volunteer to come in on their day off to operate the flight. So yeah, really hope they get good overtime for it. At this point, we're pretty well advised just to stay around close to the gate, as we were pretty well going to be reboarding as soon as possible. They just had to transfer the luggage across and the final catering. So yeah, that pretty well is the backstory about my business class flight to nowhere, which has obviously meant I've had to film the intro also here at home in my own backyard. Be sure to check it out if you haven't already, part A of this flight. I'll link it down below and also link it in the comments in the description and at the end of the video as well. But yeah, for now, let's now head back to Perth Airport T1 Domestic, where we'll pick up the rest of today's very unexpected, unusual flight to Launceston. Hope you enjoy it. Before we head directly to gate 47A, where our replacement aircraft is already awaiting, let's have a look at our route information for our direct seasonal service down to Launceston Take 2 tonight. Great circle distance on this one is 2,967 kilometers. Gazetted flight time is 4 hours and 10 minutes, though we're only going to do it in 3 hours and 24. As you can see here, this is our original flight earlier in the day, making its return to Perth. As you can see here on the map in more detail, the decision was made to finally turn around for Perth just after we left the southern coastline of WA behind, just past Fitzgerald River National Park. That was where we incurred the radio control issues. And just like that, welcome to the end of the Virgin Australia terminal here in Perth. We're at 47A, being told to stand by for an immediate redeparture towards Launceston. Sorry I couldn't go to the lounge again, but yeah, be sure to check out what the lounge was in my part A for this flight review. Anyway, with literally only moments until we're due to get on board our Take 2 ride down to Launceston today, let's have a look at our replacement aircraft taking us over there It is Victor Hotel, November Hotel Whiskey. This is one of the original ex-KLM aircraft that Virgin Australia have acquired in recent years. First flew for KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, where it was delivered in September of 2011. It then came under the ownership of Virgin Australia in November 2022. Originally, these were all economy class layout with Virgin, though as I'll soon find out, they actually do now have business class. And just like that, after a pretty short turnaround to be honest here in Perth, quite miraculous considering we're happening to find a new aircraft, probably less than an hour on the ground, didn't really take much notice. Now boarding again, didn't even have an official new departure time, but yeah, we are boarding about 4:30 PM in the afternoon, which is probably about 3.5 to 4 hours after we first had boarded the original flight. At the time, despite my initial concerns that the replacement aircraft might not actually have business class, this was because I was under the impression that the ex-KLM aircraft didn't have business class. Lo and behold, nothing actually changed in terms of boarding passes or seat assignment. So at this point, I was quietly confident I might just be getting business class after all. And just like that, very much that is the case, sense of deja vu, back in seat 1A with the same seat map and pretty well looks like the identical business class seat.
Your travel plane this afternoon. Me and the cabin crew are trying to get you on the way to Launceston. We have all volunteered today to operate this aircraft on our days off to get you going to Launceston.
Thank you.
Our flight time this afternoon is 3 hours and 31 minutes. Just one small thing, we do apologise. This aircraft does not have any in-flight entertainment, so if you wish to watch a movie or a TV show, best to download right now something from your favourite streaming service. We do apologise for that. Once we get going, flight time 3 hours 31 minutes.
Anyway, as we're in a bit of a rush to get our journey over to Tasmania finally back on track this afternoon, no real pre-departure beverages offered, but that is understandable given the circumstances. Apologies I didn't have time to give you a full seat tour as well. They'll have to wait until we're airborne. But what better time now to sit back, relax, and enjoy our taxi out to the runway again. And for the second time today, our takeoff out of beautiful sunny Perth, Western Australia. Then once we're firmly in the air, we're promising one way heading towards Tasmania. I'll go over what you can expect on a replacement business class Virgin Australia service. Now that we're firmly in the air, let's have a look at our Virgin Australia Boeing 737-700 aircraft in more detail. So 128 seats on this aircraft in business class. It is a cozy cabin of just 8 seats in a 2-2 configuration across just 2 rows. Apologies I didn't cover the seat as in more detail as the original part A of this review, but yeah, long story short, it is identical seat. So yeah, got 38 inches of seat pitch and a width of 19.5. Being located in the bulkhead row 1, you'll find your tray table actually pops out from the left hand side. Press the button and then it ejects out and flips out to your right. It is large and firm. Also has a device holder as well. It also folds back on itself. Also a small little cocktail table with a small extendable tray. Handy for when you're just enjoying a business class drink without wanting to pop out your whole tray back table. As I alluded to in part A of this review, you got the standard black leather reclining seat, good level of recline, also adjustable extendable headrest. Pretty comfortable in my opinion. You also do have a footrest as well, which flips down and extends. Not much use for a tall person like me, however. Now onto the business class service on today's flight. It's a little bit limited to be honest, but yeah, that's just the reality of the situation we're on and not really a criticism of anyone. Long story short, business class passengers were briefed that obviously we had expended most of the main good catering that came on the first flight. Obviously we had consumed the business class meal on the original flight, so now we're really just left with snacks, some beers, some wines, cheese and crackers, all that sort of stuff. I think the business class cabin did a good job of drinking the far more superior, very tasty Green Beacon beer dry on the first flight, so now we're stuck with the pretty average unbusiness class light pure blonde. Now we're leaving the coastline of WA behind without sounding like a risk of jinxing it again. At this point we can't see much outside unfortunately, but at least we are appearing to be heading in the right direction to Tasmania. Anyway, let's have a look at the onboard lavatory. Once again, 1 at the front for the business class cabin, 2 at the rear. Very similar again, very basic, neat and tidy nonetheless, though it does have a baby change table, which was in contrast to the previous aircraft, which was an ex-Virgin Blue one, at least at the front lavatory. Anyway, now as we're progressing quite well deep south of the Great Australian Bight, now offer another round of snacks and drinks. Bit vague what we're being offered, basically chips, cheese and crackers, that sort of stuff. So opted for some chips, also got a white wine. I think it was a Semillon Blanc, which tasted pretty okay in my opinion. Didn't actually worry to clarify whether the buy on board menu was basically open house for business class at this point. Perhaps I guess you could have asked for saying more substantial that you could have bought in economy class, but yeah, I dare say even if they did have hot food options available, they were probably either sold out from the original flight or were happening to be thrown out for food safety reasons. Anyway, to my surprise, the Virgin Australia Strinty-owned device entertainment system does appear to be working on this flight, even though we were advised to the contrary upon boarding. All seem to be perfectly functional bar the in-flight moving map, which did not appear to be working. Overall, reasonably decent range of movies, both evergreen content and new releases. Good range of TV shows as well. However, I'm more of a documentary person, which Virgin do lag a little bit behind. So I've just downloaded quite a lot of documentaries to my own device through YouTube Premium, where I'll be getting my entertainment today. When you are travelling in business class on Virgin Australia, you are supposed to be entitled to complimentary free in-flight Wi-Fi where it's available, but on this aircraft it does not appear to be available. Anyway, we are now progressing really well throughout the flight, well and truly into the second half, really just relaxing and enjoying. Not much else going on, very smooth and uneventful. Getting pretty late outside as well. You wouldn't really notice it however, but during the Australian summer, during daylight saving, it is literally already 9 o'clock outside. We were originally going to be arriving into Launceston about 7:30 in the evening, which would have been plenty of daylight left still to enjoy the absolutely spectacular views coming into Tasmania. Fortunately not going to be the case today, it's now getting dark outside. We're not actually going to get there to nearly midnight. Now, as there's not going to be much to see outside until we make our final descent into Launceston, it's really just a case of sitting back, relaxing and enjoying some more documentaries with another free glass of wine or two. And just like that, we can see the outline of some of the Bass Strait Islands down below, so the mainland of Tasmania must be nearing. Fortunately, there wasn't much to see on our approach today due to both a combination of the poorly lit landscape down below and rather foggy, humid conditions outside. So we'll skip straight to the final part of our landing. Once on the ground, I'll go over my thoughts and verdict on how today Virgin Australia handled the replacement business class service.
Welcome to Launceston Airport. Local time is 11:48. They will get into the gate shortly. Everyone.
It's much more efficient. It'll be 100% it's from gift to go, oh, you know what, I forgot about this. And then you can just go, refine it so you can go.
And just like that, we've finally made it to beautiful Launceston, Tasmania. Better late than never. Probably about 11:30 at night, which is about 4 hours behind schedule. We're outside. It seems to be unusually warm, humid and muggy, which is quite unlikely for Tasmania, where even in the summer, temperatures tend to be quite a lot cooler than on the mainland, even on the cooler side at night. Always find arriving into Tasmania quite an interesting experience. Even though it's been a domestic flight today, we have quite literally flown overseas, even if it isn't in the most conventional of understanding. Once we left the southeast corner of West Australia behind, it was 3 hours literally non-stop over ocean until we reached the island state. In many ways, just like West Australia takes biosecurity very seriously, being so far separated from the rest of the country, Tasmania as an island state also takes it incredibly serious. So dispose of any prohibited fresh food or agricultural items, otherwise there's a fair chance you're going to be in big strife with biosecurity. Interestingly enough, last time I flew to Tasmania was actually a direct flight to Hobart from Perth. That was during the height of the COVID pandemic back in 2021. Both West Australia and Tasmania had pretty well shut its borders to the rest of the country bar each other, as both states pretty well shut their border to other states that had COVID outbreaks, effectively exploiting their geographical isolation to keep the virus out. Even so, however, we were still met by Tasmanian police on arrival and health officials who scrutinised all our application to enter Tasmania and to ensure we hadn't actually visited any other states along the way, which in such case would have mandated a period of mandatory isolation, quite possibly in a hotel. Thankfully, travelling to Tasmania is a lot easier affair these days, even despite the drawn out experience we've had today. So let's now head to the Riverbend part the next day in beautiful Launceston. We'll wrap up today's flight and how Virgin Australia did handling this replacement service. And just like that, folks, fast forward to the next day and welcome to beautiful Launceston here in northern Tasmania. We're down here on the banks of the lovely Tamar River. Behind us you also got the King's Bridge. Behind that you got the absolutely spectacular Cataract Gorge. Just to my other side you also got the city centre of Launceston, which is a very historic city, one of the oldest actually in Australia. I think it's got a population of around about 100,000 people or so, but definitely some very, very grand buildings indeed. Anyway, in summing up yesterday's flight, it was quite an eventful day, that's for sure. But overall, given the situation, given that we had to return to Perth, those very unforeseen, unfortunate circumstances where we couldn't get in control with the tower before we made our approach south deep over the ocean down towards Tasmania, that did mean we had to return to Perth. But in all fairness, Virgin Australia, in my opinion, handled the situation incredibly well and incredibly professional at all times. The pilot on the plane was very reassuring to us that the flight wasn't at risk or anything like that. It was more of a procedural matter. You certainly don't want something going wrong when you're flying so far south down to Tasmania. So yeah, we did have to return to Perth, so we pretty well had about a 3-hour flight to nowhere, or a flight that indeed went back to Perth. So yeah, made for some interesting viewing out over the wheat belt region of West Australia. Actually the first time I had to return to Perth before on a flight. Yeah, and it was interesting being on a flight. I had to dump fuel, had the landing gear down and everything as well to increase drag, so that was really interesting. But yeah, Virgin Australia really handled the situation well. From the moment the issue first became obvious, the pilot was talking with the company straight away in the air, trying to organise a replacement aircraft. And yeah, the cabin crew also kept us very much updated with what was going on as well. Being in business class, I was literally personally briefed on the situation, so that was really, really impressive. We got back to Perth. Honestly, really didn't have much hope we would get to Launceston last night. Thought maybe there was a curfew or something in Launceston, but luckily there was no curfew. And yeah, they were able to pretty well get us on a replacement flight. So no mucking around happening to go via Melbourne or Sydney or Adelaide or something, which would have been a little bit difficult and would have been actually quite hard being in business class because I think those cabins were sold out. But yeah, on to the second flight. They eventually did get us to Launceston, which is obviously the focus of part 2 of today's video. Yeah, it was just one of those situations. The business class service was, as you can expect, a little bit trimmed down, really because the catering had to be transferred from the first flight to the second flight. And to be honest, we had already had our business class meal and most of the good drinks were already consumed. So yeah, it was really just snacks and drinks on the second flight. But yeah, still a really good crew and full marks to them as well. They all volunteered on their day off to come in and save the day. So absolutely full marks to them. Much, much appreciated. And at the end of the day, missing out on a second meal, whether I could have actually expected in the situation, I'm not really sure. But yeah, to be honest, getting to Launceston the same day last night was absolutely the main priority. Really getting another meal is just semantics. But yeah, apart from that, it was a pretty uneventful flight. It did say the in-flight stream to your own device system wasn't going to work on the flight, but surprisingly it actually did, so always worth double checking, although the Wi-Fi didn't seem to be operational. I think business class passengers can get it for free if it's available, but it didn't seem to be available on this flight. But yeah, apart from that, good crew. They really did the best they could in the situation, so hard to complain. Still had some nice wine and still had some cheese and crackers, so no complaints. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this very drawn out flight review covering my journey from Perth all the way back to Perth and then eventually to Launceston as intended, really would appreciate it if you could flicker a like, leave a comment down below, share amongst your family, and if you haven't already, really would appreciate it if you could just subscribe to the channel, click that bell and notification button on so you won't miss my next flight review. Plenty of interesting flights coming up on this trip. And if you have already subscribed, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Really motivates me to keep producing more and better content for you guys. In the meantime, you may also wish to visit my website, aussiejetsetter.com.au, for latest and flight reviews, industry news, destination guides, frequent flyer hacks and more. Maybe even check out my dedicated Instagram page to catch up with what I'm doing around the world in real time. Maybe even check out my dedicated Discord server for fans and community of the channel to discuss all things aviation and travel. But from here in beautiful Tasmania, Australia, thanks so much for watching today's flight review. And until next one, safe travels, wherever that might take you.